Hello and welcome to the Online Entrepreneur Academy podcast. And today it is a huge pleasure to welcome Wendy Firmin Price, who's going to tell us what she does. And my goodness, she does a lot of things. An incredible entrepreneur, author. Wendy, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Oh gosh, where do I start?
Good question.
I'm Wendy Firmin Price, and I am the founder of Heart Equine-Assisted Therapeutic Coaching. I'm a double award-winning author and probably a bit of a disruptor when it comes to leadership and self-worth stuff. I have been known to go for the jugular and shoot from the hip, just because I believe in authenticity and integrity, and sometimes that filter isn't always there.
We get people like that.
I primarily work with horses to help humans, entrepreneurs, leaders, teams, families remember who they really are beyond the noise, the chaos. You know what it's like with the social media and everything. The masks we put on, and I don't know about you, but I feel a lot of us entrepreneurs and mothers are in that feeling of that we've got to try and prove our worth all the time. And so I'm often known as Wendy Woo Woo, which I'm affectionately known as, because I am a little bit out there. I'm not going to apologise for that. Divine downloads come often. But I'd like to feel that within the sort of wifty wafty Wendy Woo stuff, actually I've got muddy boots on the ground and I'm as grounded as they come. I feel I'm fairly natural and normal, and I'm not known for my airs and graces. You take us as you find us. Some days will be really neat and tidy in the yard, and other days it looks like well.
And you mentioned
just a party.
Yeah, and authenticity and honesty is the best route, and it is hard sometimes for us to be honest. But you mentioned the yard and horses, so can you tell our audience how your love of horses began?
Yes. The exciting thing was I've been an entrepreneur. I think back then it would have been called a childpreneur or kidpreneur since the age of 12. And I was given a pony for my 12th birthday, and that was all wonderful, beautiful little black pony called Tiggy. And he became the love of my life. And then my mum said one day, oh, if he's going to be costing this much money, he's going to have to go back. You can imagine a little 12-year-old girl,
Yeah,
the love of her life. And I can still feel that time I was on the bus going to where we kept him, the field where we kept him. I can still feel that sobbing, that heart-wrenching, but the thought of losing. I hadn't had him that long. I think it was only about 9 months or something like that. And then in that moment, I think something kicked in that I was going to find a way. So it started with using my dinner money, which was, this is going to reveal how old I am, 7 and 6.
paid more than I did.
I don't even know what that was. That was 7 and 6 for a week. And that was five school meals. And the rent of the field was 7 shillings. And so I used to have 6 months left over. So that was the first way I thought I'd be using my dinner money. So then I would sit down around everybody's, those that had packed lunches, and then just eat the leftovers. And that was quite a pertinent time for sort of other things, which will be for another podcast. And then I started finding ways that I could make money. I would just do anything and everything. I did paper rounds on Tiggy. We'd go around and I'd tie him up out the outside while I'd then deliver papers to the flats. I worked in cafes and who else was it? A bakery, fish and chip shop. And then this then carried on. So I was already probably addicted to work. By the time I was 14, I was a workaholic. And it's one of those double-edged swords, because I am so grateful that I learned how to get really resilient. But equally, if you start an addiction that early in life, then it becomes the norm. So when you naturally work 60, 90 hours a week, it doesn't feel anything. In fact, actually, if I've done a a normal 40-hour week, I feel like, oh, she's tithing this week. And yeah, so it's put me in good stead. And also, one of the downsides of it was that I never learned to ask for help. I was always too terrified to ask for help. And then that meant that I had to do it all.
Yeah, I can see. So you've brought together horses and the world of therapy. Talk us through that, how that happened. We're probably jumping a few years, aren't we?
Yeah, yes, a normal few years together. I used to be a croupier in a casino. My theory was that if I worked all night, I could play all day with the horses, because by now by the time I was 19, I had 6 horses and started rescuing, and yeah, it just became part of my norm. And I moved around, and what was happening was trying to find me in that time. The journey, let's fast forward a few years, be much easier. So basically, the turnaround point came to when I sadly got into a relationship, a very dysfunctional relationship with somebody who had the disease of alcoholism. And at the time, I was studying for my EHS exams, where I had to ride over certain jumps, 3.6. I had, doing my teaching exams. By now, I was running a riding school, as well as doing the casino. Come to more of that later on the burnout bit. And problem was, I was terrified. I had to get over 3.6 jumps, and I was terrified of getting over 1.6 jumps. And I remember the specific day. I was at a place in Hampshire, and I was taking more and more lessons to be able to overcome this fear. But we had this really fearful German type instructor that used to, and you could hear him from all over the stables there. And you would know someone was getting it because you could hear him. And because everyone was like terrified of him. And on a specific date, I'm on this horse and he's very jittery because I'm very jittery. I'm terrified of the instructor. I'm terrified of the horse. I'm terrified of the jump. And so you know what it's like when you get terrified, you have a can't swallow and your mouth is dry, you got this stomach going. Then I realised that feeling was also what I was feeling every night when my alcoholic would come home. Because unfortunately, when he'd had a drink, he'd get very violent. And cut a very long story sideways, what happened was the journey that I got taken on, which was that time became really passionate because it was a bit of my spiritual awakening time, because the books that I got led onto and the way to deal with it, because you couldn't do the normal, what do they call it, when they sort of stop people seeing you?
Restraining orders, you talk.
Yeah, that's it. Because that was like a red rag to a bull to him. And so I had to find a very different way to deal with it. And so I started learning about how our thoughts become our reality, although I was very resistant to this, because the book that was saying, yeah, we could create the 100% reality, and it was 30 odd years ago, nearly 40 years ago. And so at the beginning of the New Thought period, where, that was just way, way out there. And that's a load of BS, because if we created our own reality, there's no way I would create having a partner like this, being 100 grand in debt, for all the other chaos that was around me. And then in chapter 2, it tells you that people are your mirrors. So that's rubbish. I don't cheat. I don't lie. I'm not an addict, and I'm not angry. I'm playing the goody two-shoes. And actually, I did actually throw the book away, but when something keeps nagging you. And then something, and I can't remember the full time, something just kept prompting me to explore. You could change your reality. What if you could visualize something? So first of all, I thought, let's see if it works with my riding. So sure enough, I did all the visualization, did all the affirmations, did all. And yeah, I got over my 3'6" jumps.
Amazing. It works.
I passed my teaching. The only thing was I fell off in the flat work, and that's because it was almost working too well, because the horse I was wishing for, I did get, but I fell off. Anyway, another story. And so I dared to explore how I could start changing the reality. But the biggest shift for me, I do use this a lot in my work, is exploring where he was my mirror. And this is what probably in psychology you would talk, looking at your shadow stuff. And I did, of course, I wasn't cheating outside. I wasn't lying to people. I wasn't, but to me, I was living a lie. I was cheating on myself. I had no self-worth. And then the anger I had just completely disassociated from. I just played Miss Goody Two Shoes all the time. And so I just wouldn't connect with my anger. And so it was projected onto him, and he was just the mirror of them, the inner rage. And so then the healing journey, then worked really well on me. And then I thought, I wonder if this will work for my clients. And I thought, no, because you could imagine 35 years ago, trying to bring therapeutic stuff into the horse world. And I was laughed at. I do remember my instructor say, oh, you can't do it, you do positive stuff. And so I did resist it for a couple of years, putting it out there. But I just carried on researching with my clients and finding out what was going on, particularly those that were dealing with fear of riding. And sure enough, they were always dealing with some other fear in their life. And if we could just get their thinking different or help overcome the fear of whatever they were dealing with in their life, it would help their riding, and overcoming the fear in their riding would help them overcome their fear in their life. And so something called holistic riding was born 35 years ago. And people would come along, and I'd help people that had major falls and terrified of riding just get their confidence back. And I had a pony called Tigger, not Tiggy, who was absolutely king at this. And then what we started finding that people would arrive, and even before they got on the horses would start working their magic, and people would start releasing emotion, they'd start talking, and the horses started doing different things. And then we learned a lot more sort of horseman groundwork stuff, which is non-riding stuff, and we worked with people's stuff. And sure enough, the horses would act like a bit of a mirror or a metaphor, or reflect back what they're feeling, or show them where they were blocked. And so 30 odd years ago, I was one of the pioneers of equine-assisted therapy. And we were just helping people overcome their stuff, their shit, with the help of the horses. And what's so powerful is the horses just respond to what's going on in the moment. And I'm sure when I remember when I was having therapy and counselling, my thing would be to tell the therapist what I thought they wanted to hear. You can't do that with horses.
I can imagine not, no.
Because being prey animals, their whole life is having to be tuned into energy. And so the energy of the weather, energy of the predator, and energy of one another. And so they are fantastic at just really bringing to the surface what is key in the moment. So you make it, so like again, sometimes we go into therapy or coaching with what we think is the problem. What the horses will do will bring up what's really going on. And it might be a belief, it might show you where you start in your thinking. It just helps in so many ways. It is mind-blowing. And although I've been doing it 30 odd years, every session still blows me away. I think, wow, how did that come about? When the horse, I think particularly our horses that are very experienced in it and they themselves are allowed to be honest, they're allowed to be expressive and be themselves, because you can't just use any horse. Well, actually, I don't like the word used. You can't work with any horse, because some horses sadly are very restricted, very told to how to behave, etc. So they don't necessarily have that same freedom. So if you're going to work with horses therapeutically, you need to make sure that they have a life that they can have expression as well.
Right. So talk us through a session. So someone comes in, or you work with schools and education establishments, don't you?
So we have quite a spectrum. So down on one level, so from the riding school point of view, which we do have a holistic riding centre, we work with new novice children and adults that are just starting out or just their confidence. That's our very sort of grassroots stuff. Then we have our teenager, where you run a community interest company, which specifically helps teenagers in trouble and troubled teenagers. And they're the ones that are maybe self-harming, suicidal, social anxiety. And they come in and work with the horses to help get their confidence and different social skills, talk through stuff in a very different way than schools allow. We do have schools that come and do what we call therapeutic coursework. So they might help along in the stables. And for some of the children with special needs, learning how to lead a horse to a field is like absolutely massive for them. It's massive in their confidence. And the environment allows them to have a little bit more freedom, a little bit more self-autonomy. And this in turn really builds their confidence. And we have one particular school that comes 2 to 3 times a week. And their children just love it. All kids clamour to be on the horse club. Then I work with mums and dads that are struggling with the kids, because I personally believe that unless the parents, one or preferably both, but certainly one, usually mum, because you're one of the leaders of the family, unless they're doing the work themselves, they'll find the stuff that we do, the healing we do with the teenagers, is less effective, because we have massive progress on the workshops and the days with the teenagers, but then they go home to the environment and then it's the same environment. And quite often teenagers are just mirroring what's not being dealt with in the family. So maybe parents are having anxiety, worry, finances, maybe their relationship's not going on, or maybe they've come grown up and they're not dealing or haven't had the opportunity to deal with the stuff from their childhood. Then they've just buried it. But buried feelings and buried stuff does not go away. And this travels up, not just in families, but now we go into entrepreneurship and businesses. And now businesses get affected because people are... So if you say, for example, you've not had the opportunity to heal trying to please dad, okay? Whether that's a daughter trying to please dad, or usually men always wanted to prove themselves to their dads. And as a child, that maybe was dismissed, or you didn't get the attention, the validation, whatever you needed. Now you think that's gone away, you think you've packed it away, but will then show up in the workforce, because then you find yourself trying to prove yourself to your boss. You try to, and particularly women, I find, who are not only trying to prove that they're good enough in the man's world, but if they still got stuff that unresolved stuff around their dad not validating or getting the love they felt or needed at the time, it will also come out. And the entrepreneurs and business people that we work with, you can just see it. There's just this unhealed little child in them that really just needs to be heard. And how you can tell is if you need that work, you need that validation, or you need that praise, or you need something to prove that you're doing a good job, then you'll find somewhere we've got a little bit of healing to do. And so I work with leaders, companies, we bring teams down to help resolve this. So a typical session, right? a typical session.
It's that simple one.
Yeah, it'll depend on what type of thing. So if you're a private individual, we would just sort out, let's see what's going on. Just tell me what you feel, what's going on feeling wise, what's going on in your life, what's the block? Is it your finances are blocked? Is it your career blocked? Are you not getting the promotions? Whatever it is. Or whatever the challenge that you've come with. So first of all, we'll just dump that before we go and see the horses. We need to dump it out of you first. So we just get a little bit of an idea. And then we set the intention of, let's try and find the horse that will be right for you to work with. Mostly you'll have a horse to choose from, and we've got normally about 20 to 28 horses to choose from to work with. And in that choosing, that tells a lot. Like in that first 5 minutes, it reveals so much. It reveals belief systems. It reveals the rejection issues. It shows up self-worth stuff. Just that first 5-10 minutes, just choosing a horse will show up so many different patterns. So anyway, we get a chosen horse, and then again, it depends. We might stay working in the stable. So if someone comes with a lot of burnout, then I teach them how to get present with the horses and show how the effect of getting present affects the horses and how they will relax, so that they can then transfer that to maybe their work environment or the family environment. So if they learn how to get present, which is not just sitting still going, it's like how to get your energy present and grounded, then by showing them the ripple effect their energy is having on the environment, that gives the kinesthetic learning rather than just words. Because I can talk, I can talk, and we can talk and talking therapies and coaching, blah, blah, blah. But nothing teaches quicker than actually having that validation or that kinesthetic learning in the moment, showing you what your block is. But what's more fascinating with the horses is the moment you shift a belief or release an emotion or get honest, they will they'll either walk on or they'll give a lick and chew, or something in their behavior will indicate that you're on the right track. And often we joke that when we're having like one of the workshops and somebody comes up with an idea or they say something, we'll hit one of the horses whinnying from the yard and they'll go, yep, there you go, that's the verification you need. And then otherwise we might go down to either the arena or the paddock and we will work through some obstacles. So suppose you've got 3 or 4 blocks to your career. So we'll assign maybe money, self-worth, or whatever the obstacles are, we'll assign them to the obstacles, and then you will lead the horse around those obstacles. And then here's the fascinating thing, is the horses often either stop or they do something weird at the obstacle that shows them that something is not in flow. And usually the horses usually stop. Okay, no, you're blocked there. And then the handler, like yourself, would then go, and I will probably come in with a question to prompt the thinking, because my job isn't to tell you any answers, but me and the horse are there to pull out what's already within you, because everyone has their knowing and wisdom deep within. The shortcut comes when you have somebody or an animal powerful enough to then prompt you to then pull that wisdom out of you. And so you might have to think, okay, the horse doesn't want to go over the obstacle. What do I actually do? Go round it or do this? And so then we look at that. If that was applied to your challenge that you moment, what about doing that is pertinent to what's going on? And there's always a way that you can then interpret what was happening with the horse to be able to then help you with your problem. So it just lasers things so much quicker. And whilst a session may be seemingly more, because you've got a horse as well, it may seem higher than the normal cost of coaching or therapy. The speed and the value, one session with the horses is worth at least 10 normal coaching or therapy stuff, because it's just so lasered and honest. And that's why we have powerful stuff that happens with the children and with teens.
That's amazing. And just to remind our listeners and those of you watching on YouTube, check the links below, because you'll be able to find the multiple ways you can contact Wendy. Wendy, let's just tell our listeners what part of the country you're in, because obviously the horses can't travel around the whole world. So you're based
so I'm based in Surrey, near Wisley Gardens, junction 10 of the M25.
That's for our UK listeners.
For our UK, yes, and it's a bit of a chaos at the moment.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but if someone's listening, say in the States or Canada or wherever, how can they find this sort of therapy and trust the provider? Or are there any sort of guidelines you would give, or any questions? Say I'm sitting in Australia, oh, this is great. What sort of question should I ask before I go to an equine therapist?
Find out what length of training they've had. It's very easy to, as a lot of professions, jump on the bandwagons, and people sign up for a £49 course to say they're an equine-assisted therapist. And that you need to find out what training they have. They don't necessarily need to be psychologists. What training have they had therapeutically themselves? And that could be spiritually, it could be, and also how do they keep the horses, etc., because that influences a lot. For example, I train people to become equine-assisted coaches and therapists, but they have to go through a 6-month personal growth first through the horses, self-mastery through the horses, before they're even allowed to start the training, because they have to understand what's going on in order to provide the best service to clients. And although for my overseas people, I do run a 2-week intensive foundation course up in August.
Yeah.
And that way, so make sure that people, I ask them what personal growth do or have they done? Because again, people are very good at getting qualifications to throw a bit of paper.
Yeah.
But this is really important work that we do with horses.
100%.
I get very protective about horses being asked too much of. Even in the riding school, our horses have a very limited amount of time that they work.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, and our horses are given choice, and they're not made to do the work, especially with the therapeutic work, because they have to have the right to say, no, I don't want to work with you. And just as we would expect that to say, no, I don't want to work with you as a therapist or whatever. But they're the little important things, is find out what actual training they've had, how long was their training, what they've done for their own personal growth, because you don't want someone often in the healing business. If we haven't done our own and don't keep up our own personal growth work, we often can be utilizing unconsciously other people for doing our stuff. And so it's like the unhealed healer. And as I think it was, I can't remember who said it, physician heal thyself first.
Yeah,
and I believe this is one of the most important things, whatever we're doing, whether it's coaching, whether it's counselling, working with horses, whatever, that we take responsibility for our own stuff. It's really important. Well, the same for the workplace. And we find this with the teenagers and families and teams that we come to. There's all this blame. But if people really understood what was going on, anything they're blaming, if you look at pointing the finger, 3 fingers come back at you. Okay? So we have to look at what is our part in this. What part are we playing that is contributing this? And of course, if we want to go down the spiritual, what part of this reality have you created? What is this about? Where's your responsibility here? Because I think if people learn to take self-responsibility. And I don't mean blame. I don't want people to go into the, oh, it's all my fault, it's all my fault. Because you're just playing victim. And I'm really keen to get people out of the victim mode again. If you're blaming other people, you're being a victim. If you're blaming yourself. The blame we don't want the blame game. What we want is accountability. We want to say, okay, what is my part in this? What's your part in this? And if we all took accountability for our part, life would be so much different. Workplace would be different. Families would be different, because they're not all trying to blame everything and everyone else, or even things like the government or him or her upstairs. Like, the moment we put outside of us as the cause of why something's going on the inside of us, then we are powerless. And I'm all about empowering people to find their truth, find their authenticity, stand in their authentic power, and find their true voice in what they say, in what they want to do, and follow their heart.
Yeah. Wise words indeed. And as you said, absolutely applicable to an entrepreneurial situation. Be authentic, be yourself. Don't try and be someone else. Put it in very simple terms, and you explained it so well. Wendy, you also write, and I just want to take the opportunity before we run out of time, because I could keep you here for hours. You have so much wisdom, and thank you. But Paul, what sparked your journey into writing? And again, we're going to put the links to your books below. So when did you start? Tell us.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? My English teacher said I would never amount to anything. I failed my English exam. And I hated my English lessons. A bit, again, I think that's all down to teachers, isn't it? If you don't like it, if you don't like your teacher, you'll never like the subject. And it wasn't until, funny enough, until I had the ME, so I got burnt out. I wonder why, working 90 hours a week. But my body went, you know what, we need to pause here. And so I'd stopped reading books. And then MEs, that was the only thing I could do, was read. And that was, again, all part of the spiritual awakening period. And I always thought, oh, I'd love to write a book. And it wasn't until we'd moved to Leicestershire, and I was stuck. And often we go through, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, or any of your readers have, listeners, what's called, like a real drought period of your life, like the wilderness time. I guess in films, you see the time when you're on the hero's journey where you feel very lost. And we'd moved to Leicestershire, and I was supposed to have been going into business with someone. We were going to take spirituality, horses, and corporate stuff, about 20 years ago. As I moved to the stable there, she decided, oh no, I'm going to have a sabbatical. And I just moved my bed. And the period when I was like really stuck, I had no work coming in, and I thought, okay, I'll volunteer. And I couldn't even give myself away for free, because at the time the RSPCA wouldn't take me because there was foot and mouth on. There was I thought, oh, pet bereavement, because I've had lost some horses. No, they didn't need anybody in my area. I thought, well, no, I'll be a Samaritan. And they didn't even want me as a Samaritan. There was no training.
Close to saying something.
Yeah, so I mean, like, about self-worth, you can give yourself away for free. So I was left with, what? Right, I've got no work, no clients. What do I really want to do? Because I was like really stuck. I thought, oh, I'd really love to write it. And I thought, oh, wow, I don't know how to write a book. I thought, oh. And I literally just sat at the computer once. Thought, okay, what can I write about? Overcoming adversity. That has got a bit of writer's block. And anyway, I just wrote things. And I thought, and at the time I was really quite depressed. And I thought, okay, what do I need to do to get out of this depression? So my very first book became 40 Days and 40 Ways of Overcoming a Problem. And each day I just wrote what I needed to do. And I broke it down to spiritual, mental, emotional, and practical. So there was 10 things I needed to do. And that was my very first book, and it was called 40 Days and 40 Ways. And it was very self-published, literally printed and then little bound with the little red binders. And I sold it to £15. I think I sold about 50 copies. But they never made Amazon. But it is an online course now. And anyway, so that sparked my interest. And then I was on one of the personal growth seminars, and someone was discussing how to write a book and what the benefits of writing a book were. So my first book I wrote was The Heart of Stable Relationships. And that was intentionally because I was very much into helping people with their relationship stuff. And it was 12 ways the healing power courses could transform their lives. And so then I started getting the bug for that. And yet another drought period, burnout period. I was traveling to America for a course, and literally I was up in the air on the plane, and I just thought about something that was going on for me, and I thought, I'm just driven by this perfectionism all the time and trying to be perfect. And so my next book was called Imperfect as I Am, spelt I'm Perfect as I Am, and let's break free from the prison of perfectionism. And that's slightly less horsey, but there's a few examples of how the horse is held. That's real practical. There's lots of little exercise in there, how to overcome perfectionism and just love and accept who you are. And then we were talking at the yard, and we anthropomorphize, I can't say that word. We humanize the horses, and often discuss their antics in the field as though they're having a drama. And somebody said to me, "Oh, you should write a book about all of this." So I did. And that's my latest one called 50 Blades of Hay. And it's a collection, literally 50 stories of horses, humans, and healing. And it's made up of the stories of the horses and what's going on for them. After each little mini chapter, and they're just literally little short stories for those of you who don't have a long time to read. It's ideal. It's endless chapters. It's like just a quick little chapter, about 500 words to 1,000. But at the end of it, there's something called pony ponderings. Wow. And from the story, which might be funny, it might be sad, it might be whatever, you're given questions to ponder how that story might actually affect you, or where in you are you doing that, or whatever. For example, what I usually quote is torn between two lovers. So Bill would always be torn between which mare he wanted to have. And I liken that then to where we get stuck with the new shiny object stuff. We get torn away from our projects. But equally, we feel we're always caught in this dilemma of decisions. Do I do? Whereas when we learn how to let go, the right decision can come through. So there's a little bit of Wendy wisdom woven through in a very playful way. It's very funny in parts, but there's also you all need a box of tissues. Because they're all real. It's not made up. They're all genuine stories. Not the I've embroidered what's going on with the horses, but yeah, they're all real examples. And there's been some guest speakers as well about their journey with the horses and what they gained. And then my latest book, which will soon be ready, is called Dying to be Heard. A little bit more serious. This is all about dying to be heard, giving teenagers a voice straight from the horse's mouth. And it's about the work that we do with the children, helping them give their voice what they want parents, schools, organisations to know. So I've been interviewing teenagers and drawing on the work that we've done with them, with the horses. So again, it's very personal and but very poignant, because I believe a lot of teenagers get a rough deal and they get labelled troublesome, whatever. But actually, if people really knew what was going on, they would change their minds. And we've now also got a documentary just about to be released about 3 of those teenagers that we've taken on a journey and where they are now.
And where's that documentary going to be seen?
It will be on YouTube. We are literally, I think I was sent the final draft today, and we will put it on the YouTube with a link to it. And yeah.
Great. Well, again, as my regular listeners know, everything will be in the show notes and under our own YouTube channel to find that. That's amazing. So you mentioned self-publishing and you've also won awards. So what awards have you won? I know people will be curious for your writing.
Yeah. So I worked with a publishing company that helped publish and promote, and they got the Imperfect as I Am to #1 in 10 different countries, and in their launch week. So that was really powerful. And then the 50 Blades, I had a stab at myself because the funds at the time didn't allow to draw on another publisher. And we got that to #1 in its launch week and held #1 spot for about 10 days. So that was really powerful. So I was really proud of that.
Yeah, rightly. Absolutely. So if someone's got a book inside them, I think they can take the advice from what you've just said. Where would you advise them to start? Is it just sit down and go for it? As simply as
they say everyone's got a book inside them. And the key thing when you're writing a book, it's not just about your own story. You have to remember, what's in it for the reader? Because otherwise it just becomes all about me sort of thing. Whereas if you can take your story but use it as the inspiration, that's what then helps people get more from that book. And start where you are, just literally start writing something, and then dedicate time to do it. It doesn't have to be much each day. I'm a binge writer, so I like to go away for a few days and just dump my stuff. I need complete silence. I don't like anybody around me, and then it just divinely downloads, and it just comes out. So I'm a like all or nothing type of person. I struggle just to do those 500 words a day because I need to get into the lesson I want to share. I need to get into whatever. So it's finding your own rhythm is important, but making sure that you do make that commitment to yourself, because if anyone asks how long it takes to write a book, most authors will say the actual writing takes very little time. It's the procrastination and allowing everything else in between that takes the years.
Yeah, that makes huge sense. And you will have had feedback. Is there anything that's surprised you or inspired you in the reviews, or?
Just really touched on how, particularly with the 50 Blades, there's been some great 5-star reviews on it. And it's particularly with 50 Blades, it's actually, I think what was surprising was how much the younger generation really enjoy reading it. And I had a parent say to me how much her child, who was on the autism spectrum, found, because they were very short stories, that she was able to read them and enjoy them and not feel that she had to try and keep track of characters and whatever. And so that she got a lot from it. And so it's that book that you can give the horsey person,
Right.
but equally someone who's not horsey but loves human life stories, that the antics of the horses and what goes on in the stables will provide a lot of joy. And
I think we'll have a lot more readers when people hear what you've said, and I think they can be, because obviously you've got a sense of fun and humour behind the very serious work you do, as in great serious results and life-changing results.
yeah.
Really, to round off with some cheeky questions, fun questions at the end of my podcast. So I've got these specially prepared for you. So these are desert island style. You'll recognise the reference to our British Radio 4. But so if you could bring one horse from history, fictional film, to your desert island, which horse would that be and why?
Oh gosh, that's a real one. I have to take Tiggy, my first pony, because he has changed the lives of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So through my journey with him, and I had him for 30 years. He was 35 when he died, so very old age. I owe him such a lot. He saved me in my childhood.
Journey, working for yourself.
Yeah, and but also because of the other shit going on in, we've all got a childhood to moan about.
Yeah.
And when things got too much, he would be the reason to stay on Earth. So that definitely, he would be my pony. But if the desert island was big enough, I'd have all my horses.
Well, I think we can allow you to have your horses there because my last question is going to relate to all those horses being there. So I'll give you a heads up. So on your desert island, I've got my notes here. You're allowed 3 non-horsey items. So what would they be? Like luxury items or music?
Okay. My root powder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Would have been.
Sounds unfortunate. That's why I'm really grateful for the COVID and learning about that. So that saves me a fortune. Yeah, that would definitely be my one item. I would probably take a book. It used to have been Course in Miracles, but now it's one big book here, but the hidden teaching, esoterical teachings. So I'd love a real deeper, meaningful book to read. What were my third item?
That food or that luxury. But no both.
Luxury. Gosh, luxury.
It's your interpretation of the word luxury. Somebody said a toothbrush. I get that.
Oh, yeah. I think actually probably something like a toothbrush. Yeah.
Okay. So if the island, I'm reading my notes here, if the island had a magical stable with all your horses in that played one soundtrack over and over, what's the theme song to?
Without a doubt, the House of the Rising Sun.
Ah, okay. Same
Yeah.
generation, but yes.
Yeah, that is, everyone knows. There's a karaoke, the Wendy Murders, House of the Rising Sun.
I think I'll keep the original in my mind if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Wendy,
By my Desert Island film would be
I'll go for
The
it.
Sound of Music.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, that was the film when I was growing up that was very, I think, influenced me a lot. So that although I don't have children myself, I'm like to have thousands of children come to me, and what they know is that the Lister Horse and Pony Centre will always be their home that they can come back to, and they fly the nest to go off, and there's always a safe home for them.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. Wendy, you've been an amazing guest and shared so much with the audience. Thank you so much. Any final words of advice in terms of entrepreneurship or healing? And obviously, we're going to have the notes below so people can reach out to you. And please, listeners, viewers, do reach out to Wendy. You've got all the contact points, and this could be such a lifeline for so many people, couldn't it, in all seriousness?
Yeah. So remember, not just entrepreneurship, but life is an inside-out game. You are always going to experience whatever's going on so within, so without. And so if you don't go within to sort out, you'll go without, and your outside will mirror what's going on the inside. And so anything that you're seeking outside of you, go within to find it first, whether it's validation, whether it's love, self-esteem, even, and this will sound weird, clients, because you need to find that in you. What is it about needing those clients to serve? What is it? And find out what you need in you first. Because when you heal you, when you make yourself more whole, your vibration becomes much higher. And you then attract in those that you can serve because you're on a much better wavelength. The lower when you're in fear and worry and whatever, then you're just going to keep attracting more of that. And the idea is to get your vibration as high as possible, and then you'll attract the people that would love to work with you. And remember, if ever you're stuck, that the task before you is never, ever greater than the power behind you and within you.
Amazing. Wendy, once again, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure, Susan. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Wendy.